Good morning once again. I request that we take our seats. We will begin in 30 seconds. So those who are still standing, having conversation, I request that we do take our seats. I am Juliet Adoch. I'll be your day manager for the event today. And welcome to the 4th Regional Conference on Forced Migration. This year is unique. I'll request to take off the mask since I know I have social distancing. So this year is unique because normally we would have this room packed to capacity and would have people from different parts of the world. But because of the circumstances around the world with COVID, stream and those who are watching through Zoom and following the discussions. It is also going to be quite interesting that we'll have a number of presentations that we will, people will be joining us on Zoom. So let us prepare ourselves. The circumstances have made us this way, but it's also showing us how much we are adapting to technology each and every passing day, which is kind of great for us in the 21st century. I welcome you all. By the standard operating procedures around COVID, let us keep social distancing. Have your masks on. I've requested to have mine off because I know I'm quite a distance. Have your masks on. Kindly, when you feel you have touched a surface that you don't feel so safe, we have sanitizers at every point. Please sanitize your hands and avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth if you're not sure of where you have touched. We have the Refugee Law Project team to assist you with anything you need. I'll request the Refugee Law Project staff to stand so that anybody at any time can reach you for any help that they may need. Refugee Law Project staff, please. So around the room we have them. In case you need anything, just reach out to any of them and they should be able to assist you. For those that are following us online, we have our technical team. You can send a message through the links that they have provided in case something is not clear, and they'll be able to respond and react to that. So with that, I'll request that we introduce ourselves. We are few, so we can just go around. You can tell us who you are, where you're from, and briefly, very briefly, your expectations for this regional conference. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Nicole Bieler. I'm the head of the Democratic Governance Facility, and I'm very happy to be here to listen and to learn from all of you with the expertise on the subject matter. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Joris van Bommel. I'm the Deputy Ambassador from the Netherlands. I'm very pleased to be here and very pleased to have actually again a meeting in a meeting room and not only virtual. So for those who are in the room, happy to see you, and for those online, I hope next time to be here as well.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Biaruhanga Godfrey. I work with the Office of the Prime Minister. I am the field coordinator for the Department of Refugees, but standing in for Commissioner at the same time. You're most welcome.
Good morning, everyone. My name's Anderson. Thank you all.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Devota Noe. I'm the head of programs at Refugee Law Project. My expectations is that I would like to get updates on what's happening with the refugees. Thank you.
Yes, good morning. I am Joy Okello from the Netherlands Embassy, Humanitarian Affairs and Migration Officer. Happy to be with you all here.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Mary Kampogo. I am the Program Manager, Mental Health and Sexual Wellbeing Program at Refugee Law Project. Good to see all of us. Thanks.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Koma Kech John Gwok. I'm the district chairperson of Lamu local government.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Charity Immaculate, and I work with the Refugee Law Project as a field office coordinator for Kriandongo Field Office. My expectation tonight is to hear new ideas to see how we're going to save the lives of refugees with these severe effects of COVID-19.
Good morning. My name is Tim Esther. I work with the Refugee Law Project as a field office coordinator based in Adjumani. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Geoffrey Howard Okot. I work with Refugee Law Project as a field office coordinator, Lamu. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm called Ojok David Stephen. I work with Refugee Law Project, Field Office Coordinator, Hoima Field Office. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Ogwang Ashaba Ingrid. I'm a National Poll Manager with International Rescue Committee. I'm looking forward to learning from everyone here.
Good morning, and my name is Agre Aichirize. I work with the International Rescue Committee as an urban program manager. I would like to understand the COVID impact on the urban refugees.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Bamrangi Irene Jori. I'm a refugee from Burundi, based in Uganda at the moment. I'm here to share with you about COVID-19.
Good morning. Boniface Ojok from DGF. I look forward for a productive discussion. Thank you.
Senior Risalo, the Office of the Director at the Refugee Law Project. And I'm so much looking forward to this meeting, looking at management of refugees in these pandemic times.
Good morning. My name is Francis Anyanzo. I'm a PhD student from University of Wits, currently doing my research here. I hope to know more about the situation of refugees in the context of COVID-19 and also to get to know a few people involved in the field of refugee issues in Uganda. Thank you.
At Refugee Law Project, Bara Field Office. And my expectation is that I want to learn from all of us the best practices we have been able to engage or deploy during these pandemic times.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Amadou Salongo Jean-Pierre, a refugee from DRC, living in Kampala, but also I'm a member of Rendezvous Youth Group, which is a Refugee Law Project support group. What I expect from this session is to have a leveled understanding of the impact of refugees, the impact of COVID-19 on refugees and the host community. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Hadnet Tesfom. I'm an interpreter I'm an Eritrean interpreter with the Refugee Law Project. I'm also a refugee, so I'm really looking forward to the event.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Apollo Mlondo. I also work with Refugee Law Projects as EFA facilitator in the Kampala office.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Martha Akello, and I work at the Refugee Law Project as the Program Manager, Media for Social Change.
Good morning, everyone. Can everyone see me? Am I seen from all angles? My name is Susan Alupo, and I work with Refugee Law Project. I manage the Access to Justice program, and I've been the one spearheading most of the invitations you've received with the team. So you're welcome.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Patience Katenda. I'm sure I have spoken to many of you on phone. This is the face behind the phone calls. Thank you so much for being here, and I look forward to the deliberations we shall be enjoying over the course of the next 3 days. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Nabais Sharifa. I am a facilitator from Refugee Law Project, and I'm looking towards learning from each one of us here. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Maganya Diodone. I work with the Refugee Law Project in the program, Media for Social Change program, as a video advocacy assistant. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Gilbert Nwajira. I'm the personal assistant to the director at the Refugee Law Project. Today I'm joining the media team, and I can confirm that we already have guests from Dignity Kwanza in Tanzania joining us on Zoom. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. By name, I'm Jim Ilunga. I work with the Refugee Law Project on the Media for Social Change program as a video advocacy assistant.
Good morning. My name is David Onen. I manage the Gender and Sexuality program, but oversee the Securing Refugee Host Relations project. Particularly, I will be keen to learning what does the future look like for refugee management, specifically look at the durable solutions. What will integration look like? What is the future of resettlement? And what does return and repatriation mean? Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Chris Dolan. I'm Director of Refugee Law Project. I'm just looking forward to being in a real place for a change. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And I believe we'll get to know each other more during the breaks. We're trying our best to keep time for those that are following us on Zoom. So with that, let me invite Chris Dolan, the Director of Refugee Law Project, to come and give us welcome remarks.
Thank you, Juliet. To our Head of Development Cooperation and Deputy Head of Mission at the Netherlands Embassy, the Head of Facility of the Democratic Governance Facility, representatives from Office with the Prime Minister, representatives from District Local Government. We have, or we will have, His Royal Highness, the Paramount Chief of the Mahdi. We're expecting Professor Chris Mbazira, Principal of the School of Law, Makerere University, Professor Laura Hammond, who by internet will be our keynote speaker this morning, all things being equal, from School of Oriental and African Studies in London. Refugee representatives here today and online, I hope, and other representatives from academia, civil society, media, including, of course, members of Refugee Law Project here and online, all protocols observed. I'm very pleased and still feeling, I must say, a bit surprised to welcome you today to the 4th Annual Regional Forced Migration Conference, all 4 of which have been supported by the Netherlands Ministry of Foreign Affairs and by the Democratic Governance Facility, both of which are represented here today. I say surprised. I think after 10 months of COVID-19, it has become sometimes hard to imagine being able to host an event with people present in a real space and in real time, even if we all look a bit different with our masks. We're very delighted to be able to proceed with this, what is actually a blended virtual and physical event. I have to say, when did you last get 30 people introducing themselves on a Zoom webinar? I don't think it's possible yet. The technology is improving all the time, but it's so much nicer to actually hear from people one by one. But anyway, we're happy to proceed and to have this opportunity to explore with you what the future of refugee management might look like. As we all know, COVID-19 has shaken up many things, including our understanding of refugee management now and moving forward. On the one hand, it makes many people yearn to get back to some sense of normal, even though we're still struggling to see what will eventually shake down into a new normal. On the other hand, COVID-19 has certainly opened our eyes to the many things that were perhaps not so great about the old normal. So I hope that we shall see over the coming 3 days that we're together how to maximize the opportunity that COVID-19 has provided us to reflect deeply on what we mean by refugee management, to sift out the chaff from the wheat, to know what we would want to keep in future, what we need to change and what must be thrown out. One part of the emerging new normal that we should experience these 3 days, and that personally I hope we shall keep and develop much further, is this capacity to make events like this as truly international as possible. In this regard, I'm particularly pleased that for this occasion we have Nairobi in Kenya and Kinshasa in DRC. And we have colleagues tuning in from Tanzania. While most of our presenters from other countries have pre-recorded their presentations, I hope it's only a matter of time before our online communication systems style up to allow more reliable, direct connection, including by refugees hosted in the more remote areas of their countries of asylum. I have to say we have done a couple of big online meetings where we have managed to have refugee representatives from the settlements, but it's actually a very real-time process to get the connection to work at all and to sustain it and for people to be able to talk to a Zoom meeting. So there's a way to go. Refugee management. It's a strange and in many ways a challenging term. What does it mean? Who is managing and on the basis of what credentials? What are they managing? What are we managing if we're amongst those who are managing? Refugees as homogeneous groups or blocks? Are we managing depersonalized refugees like pieces on a chessboard? Are we managing very specific parts of individual refugee experiences that any human being would be grateful for assistance with? Can we reduce refugee management to a technocratic process, or is it actually part of a fundamentally political dynamic that is constituted by adapting to ever-changing national and international realities? As various sessions in this conference will explore, COVID-19 as an international reality has interfered with three key areas that on the surface are about management: registration on arrival, service delivery during asylum, and resettlement, for a few, in the longer term. And yet, refugee management also has to respond to longer-term changes in human behavior. One global trend which refugees are very much part of is urbanization. Much though COVID-19 has raised questions for those with the resources who want to choose between urban homes more socially distanced and rural homes that will be packed with technology to allow them to be on Zoom webinars, the trend towards urbanization overall is unlikely to change unless there is a fundamental rethink of how our economies work, probably away from a growth model and towards a sustainability model. And I don't see any signs of that happening right now. I think everybody is desperate to get back to the old normal of let's pursue growth and growth and growth. And for that to work, you probably need urbanization. We also have a very important session on silos. And in that one, what we hope to get clear is the way in which those of us involved in management of other people can easily end up distorting the lived reality and the lived experiences of those who fall under those management regimes. In fact, it will show how, when managing our own lives, particularly mapping out our professional turf, our academic studies, our career progression, that managing our own lives can become more important than the needs of those that we say we are supporting. And the case study we're having of that is of trafficking and refugees. And we see a silo in terms of people working on refugees on the one hand and people working on trafficking on the other. I hope we shall end up agreeing that the future of refugee management cannot actually be separated out from managing the harms of trafficking in persons. As well as the ways in which the very personal needs can interfere in effective management, we also have to be cognizant of the ways in which the norms that we live and breathe, the norms that are so much part of how we view the world that we don't even realize we hold them as norms, how those norms can also interfere profoundly to determine, very unfairly, what experiences different people have as refugees. Do we think that everybody should have equal access to justice regardless of their gender? In this room, I certainly hope so. Do we recognize that in reality, access to justice is profoundly gendered? In other words, that women and men and others actually follow quite different pathways towards justice, and because they follow quite different pathways, they end up in completely different places also. So there's a big session on that. I hope that that will be of interest. The session on resettlement brings back the question of the relationship between refugee management and the more immediate changing political environment internationally. My guess is that amongst the very many sighs of relief that came about when the US election was called in favor of Biden-Harris, none were bigger than those of refugees hoping for resettlement to the land of the free. I think those who follow it will know that the US cut its resettlement numbers from around, I think, 80 or 90,000 to about 10,000 a year under Trump. So we hope that apparently Biden is busy signing a number of directives to undo all the bad work that Trump has done for 4 years. Let's hope that that's one of the directives that he's signing, is they undo that, bring back the resettlement quotas. Finally, our discussion of localization is perhaps, I would say, the most challenging of all in terms of moving towards a new normal. Localization, as we're using it for this conference, refers to the channeling of resources direct to refugees and hosts, rather than through organizations traditionally regarded as part of the refugee management architecture. As Refugee Law Project, we've worked for a decade now to build up refugee support groups that can speak and act for themselves and interact directly for themselves with donors. And we have seen signs, particularly during COVID-19, that donors are starting to see the value of being able to go direct to refugees when the so-called refugee management organizations are all under lockdown and unable to interact directly with their clients and beneficiaries. So we're really happy that donors are seeing the need for a greater flow of resources to organize refugees, but we can also talk at length about some of the challenges in changing the way in which money is administered and managed. And I think that, for me, I think the politics of it are perfect, and the practice is quite challenging. My apologies, I thought my phone was on silent. So that's it's come just to let me know that I should stop. But I hope that those remarks give you a taste of what this 3-day conference is about. I think I've spoken to each of the sessions that we have in the program. So once again, on behalf of our whole team at Refugee Law Project, a few of whom are here and most of whom are online, I hope, watching, I welcome you to these 3 days. Thank you very much. And I think it falls to me the honor and the privilege of inviting our first guest speaker, Joris van Bommel, the head of cooperation and deputy ambassador and many other things as well. Joris, you're most welcome. We're so happy to see you today.
Thank you. Let me put off my mask self. Well, thanks for having me here, and thanks for the introduction, Chris. Good morning to you all, especially also the colleagues online. Also would like to welcome the representative from OPM, Nicole from DGF, Chris, and all the other colleagues from Refugee Law Project, and everybody else in the room. It is for me always a pleasure to be with you, to be together with the Refugee Law Project, and I'm pleased today to be part in this first session of this regional conference on forced migration, with also a focus on the future of refugee management in the Great Lakes region. For us as the Netherlands, forced migration is a very important part of our collaboration, of our programming, of our foreign affairs program. We really think that we have to do, and we have to do much better, both in the Netherlands. We can have some critics on the Americans. I think on Europe as well, some critical points to be made still, but also in finding ways of how to integrate it in the rest of our programming. But before entering a little bit more into how we see it as here within our embassy, let me first once again applaud also Uganda on the open door policies for refugees, which I think is still a very good solidarity example in the world. So thank you very much to the representative of OPM for that one. I think it shows how it can be done. It sees also what still has to be done, how we can make that link between direct support to refugees, also link it to host communities, linking it to a short-term response, but also to a much more long-term response. So also the work and the creation and the work of the CRF is, I think, very important and a good example. Although as well, I think in those challenging times of COVID, it is important to reflect on it. Secondly, I think the theme of today about thinking about the regional aspects of the Great Lake is also very important. For us, I think we can learn from each other. I think the other countries in the region can learn from Uganda, but there are also things which can be learned for Uganda from the other countries. For the Netherlands, the Great Lakes region is an important region. Besides our bilateral work, the program we have here in Uganda between the Netherlands and Uganda, we also do have a regional program together with our embassy in Kigali, our embassy in Bujumbura, our embassy in Kinshasa, and our embassy office in Goma, on a regional Great Lakes program, really to see how we can work on the rule of law, how we can support peace and stability, how we can record human rights, especially also women's rights and girls' rights, but also to support on strengthening and building resilience in the region is for us a very important one. Like in our own bilateral program, where we have a focus on the rule of law and good governance, where we have a focus on SRHR, sexual reproductive health and rights, where we have a focus on food security, and where we have a focus on private sector development, we work with a couple of cross-cutting teams. Obviously, women's rights and girls' rights is one of those cross-cutting teams. And we have to think much better, also within our own organization, but also the government of Uganda and other organizations. What does that mean? It's nice to mention something cross-cutting, because sometimes you don't have to do anything on it. But it's really to find that translation between, if we talk about the rule of law, what does that mean for women's rights? What does it mean for equity? What does it mean for gender, etc.? So we really want to see, we really see gender and women's rights as one of those cross-cutting themes. Another cross-cutting theme is for us climate and climate change, which is also an important one. Same question. It's nice to mention it, but what does it exactly mean if we work on food security, if we work on private sector development, but also if we work on rule of law or good governance? What does that mean? Climate change integrating in those factors. And a third one for us is also the refugee response, migration, regional issues as well. So in our own program, we have decided not to take migration or refugees as a silo, as you just talked about, Chris, but really to see it as a cross-cutting theme. If we talk about a refugee response, what does that mean in terms of rule of law? Translation, what does it mean for access to justice for refugees? Is that indeed the same? Can we make it? What else has to be done to make sure that that access is there? Same thing in food security. What does it mean if we work in food security on skills training, agricultural skills, entrepreneurial skills? How can we make sure that this is also done for refugees and for host communities? I think that's also the policy from the government of Uganda. But the challenge is how to translate it exactly. Same thing for SRHR, sexual reproductive health and rights. It's not just copying the programs you do in Kampala or in other parts of the country. It's really thinking through, what does that mean in Adjumani? What does that mean in Bidi Bidi? What does that mean in our regional programs with Burundi and Rwanda, for example, in that regard? That's how we try to develop our program. Of course, if you look at over the last 10 months, the impact of COVID-19 is worsening also the many gains we have been made in this area, just in the country, but also in the refugee response. So we have to think through, and that's one of, I think, the lessons or the reflections I would like to give to you for the deliberations of today. So what can we do to building back better? Or building better, maybe we should keep out the word back, but building better in this regard. And to find really ways to reduce the vulnerabilities of refugees and host communities, also caused by this pandemic. That means as well to think about what's happening with the decrease of funding for example, food relief. We have those discussions with WFP in that regard. What does it mean in finding ways for livelihoods of refugees? How can we strengthen livelihoods for refugees? And how can we work together in that humanitarian development nexus? Another point of reflection for us is also about the resilience and confidence. It comes back, Chris, on the point you just mentioned about how can we make sure that refugees and host communities are able to actively participate and contribute in those dialogues? How can we make sure that their voices are heard, that we are organized, that we work together? It comes back to another point which is important for when we discussed in the Netherlands about how we have to build back better or build better in terms of the localization agenda. I think it's an important principle from the Grand Bargain commitments. And it's of a specific interest as well for the Netherlands, especially now our own Minister of Foreign Trade and Development Cooperation, Minister Kaag, is one of the Grand Bargain eminent persons. It is important that more of the means we all have, also the Netherlands and other countries, are put directly in the hands of those people who are in need, of the organizations who work directly with them, and not always to all the levels. I think there's a clear commitment on it. And what does that mean? Also, if you think about the management or the future management of migration and refugees in this region. A fourth one is also about what we think is important, and also we try to apply to our own policies in the Netherlands, not only our development cooperation policies, but also our consular policies, is the principle of family unity. We try to recognize that. What does it mean in terms of this COVID-19 pandemic, which has had a quite negative effect on the reunification of a number of refugees? We really try to prioritize now as well the issuance of travel documents of those concerned persons. It is important that it's given attention because I think family separation might have or will have as well mental health and psychosocial effects. And that's mainly maybe my fifth point, the importance of mental health and psychosocial support. It is quite clear and quite strong on our agenda in our ministry right now over the last year. And we're really trying to make some efforts in working on it. That's also why we are so pleased and proud of working together with the Refugee Law Project. That's also why we're trying to see with our work with UNFPA or with other partners, what does that exactly mean? How can we really support also mental health and psychosocial support, which is a key element. I think also if you talk about the management of refugees in the region. I'm happy also to mention that, or to announce that somewhere in the next year, we don't know exactly when, because we have the same challenges as here with COVID on organizing events, but we are planning organizing a regional event on mental health and psychosocial support for the region. So together with Rwanda, Burundi, Congo, and probably as well Tanzania and maybe Kenya. Will be somewhere in next year. It might be during the International Day of Mental Health and Psychosocial Support. Might be a little bit earlier, but we're going to work on it, and we would like to work together with you, but also build on some of the lessons learned and the experience you have, and maybe as well some of the findings of today. So let me stop here for now. Once again, thank you very much for organizing this event today. I really would like to take the opportunity to wish you a really fruitful conference and deliberations, and I'm looking forward to see what kind of findings of solutions or recommendations will come up, both for you, both for the government of Uganda, but also for organizations like my own organization, the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So thank you very much and good luck today.
Thank you so much, Joris. I think everyone will agree we're very fortunate to have a partner that is so on top of what is actually going on around the world, as a Ministry of Foreign Affairs should be, but they should be, that's not always a guarantee. So we're really very delighted to be working with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and to have a donor who understands the importance of contextualizing response, the importance of cross-cutting themes, and now the new phrase, building better. Let's forget building back. That reminds me of America being great again. Let's build better. Let's look forward. And also the importance of mental health, which indeed is something that I think encouraged also by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, but we have been giving it a lot of attention, and I think we're not quite ready to inject it all into a conference at this point. So by next year, I think we shall be ready. So we've taken up that challenge and are looking forward to engaging on the regional conference in some depth. So thank you very much, Joris, and it is now my pleasure to invite our next speaker, who is the head of facility at the Democratic Governance Facility, Nicole Biela. You're most welcome. I hope you noticed that her mask and her jacket.
Thank you so much. So now that everybody has seen the mask and my jacket, I guess I can take it off. Good morning, everyone. Dear Chris and RLP team, dear government representatives, OPM, local officials, other representatives from ministries, departments, and agencies who might have joined. I see the room is filling up, and also great to have colleagues online. Dear Deputy Head of the Dutch Embassy and Head of Cooperation, and one of our DGF partners, which I will get to. Distinguished speakers, including the refugee representatives who are here. Civil society representatives, all stakeholders who are here and are joining this very, very important conversation. It's an honor to be here with you to talk about this very crucial matter. And I want to thank the team for bringing us together to reflect on these issues. And I think my predecessor made some excellent remarks already that I'll build on and further reflect on. Before I do, allow me to briefly just introduce DGF to you. Maybe not everybody is so aware of what the DGF actually is. It's a facility that was created by 7 development partners. The Netherlands is one of them. We also have Austria, Denmark, the European Union, Norway, and Sweden. Did I miss anyone? Is that 7? EU. How could I forget the EU? And the DGF seeks to contribute to promoting democracy and human rights here in Uganda by providing support both to state and non-state partners. And the Refugee Law Project is one of our partners. And these partners are active in the areas of democratic governance and the promotion and protection of human rights. They seek to enhance access to justice and to improve accountability at all levels and across the country. So the support that DGF is providing is aligned to the government of Uganda's own democratic governance objectives and principles as outlined in the Constitution. And it contributes, our support contributes to the country's Vision 2040, and of course implementation of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, which is a global agenda that we're seeking to help implement here in Uganda. So ladies and gentlemen, starting with the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, which, as you will all know, sets out to leave no one behind. And I think this is why it's also so important that we have focused discussions about refugees and forced migrants to take stock and understand what their situation is, to make sure we're not leaving them behind here in Uganda and globally. And it's important that we reflect specifically on the impact of COVID on their situation. So this is great that we have this focus of this discussion. And as was mentioned, and as you all know, Uganda is, of course, one of the largest refugee hosting nations in the world. And this is very commendable. And as my predecessor, I want to welcome and thank Uganda for the open door policy of the government. And as we all know, of course, we live in a region where there are wars, violence, and persecution. And these are among the drivers of the forced displacement into Uganda, where refugees seek to find a safe haven. So the DGF supports the Refugee Law Project on a project entitled Supporting Justice Through Formal, Informal, and Transitional Mechanisms. And this project, and I'm sure you will talk about it more, seeks to respond to the multiple gaps in access to justice for forced migrants. The project also considers transitional justice for the underlying harms that were experienced by refugees during conflict and other mass violations of rights, which often are, of course, the very cause of forced migration. And DGF's support to the Refugee Law Project has, over time, contributed to enhancing access to justice for refugees and migrants. And the support has improved the capacity of policymakers and implementers to handle matters of refugees and migrants. And it has increased the awareness regarding the plight and rights of refugees. And refugees themselves have been empowered to demand for their rights. So as we now find ourselves in this global COVID-19 pandemic, we need to reflect on how various sections of society have been specifically affected by this pandemic. And so it's good that we have an opportunity to interrogate the specific effects on the category of refugees and forced migrants. In many places around the world, the response to the pandemic had the immediate effect of hindering refugees from escaping their home countries due to the travel restrictions. And this was also the case here in Uganda. Within Uganda, the refugee settlements are, as we all know, geographically located close to the nation's borders, some of which are porous, and this posed challenges for the country's COVID-19 response. And the movement of refugees, new arrivals, and pendular movements have further complicated the required testing and contact tracing. The centralization of the COVID response and lack of testing in remote areas presented additional challenges, not to speak of the pre-existing challenges in the refugee settlements themselves, where because of the living conditions, social distancing, etc., is almost impossible. Moreover, food distribution and access to necessity services such as healthcare and others were curtailed by the movement restrictions. And as we know, refugees depend significantly on the support by national and international agencies for their subsistence needs, such as food, shelter, and clothing. And if we reflect on the group of refugees, if we then look at specifically the situation of urban refugees, that's of course invariably worse, as they're not receiving the food aid from the refugee supporting agencies and cannot benefit from government relief efforts that was underway because refugees do not have the national identity cards. And so if we then look even closer within the group of urban refugees, it can be observed that those interventions that do exist, they tend to focus on Kampala, but leave out and do not reach refugees in other towns and cities of Uganda. And so this conference will hopefully give us a better assessment of urban refugees in general, while specifically looking at the situation beyond Kampala, so looking at Gulu, Lamu, Mbarara, Hoima, Arua, and other places. So ladies and gentlemen, let me go back a little bit on the access to justice challenges that refugees face, in particular in remote areas where the presence of the judiciary and the police is limited. So the lack of access to justice was exacerbated by the COVID lockdown, as curfew and limited transportation to and from refugee settlements subjected refugees to so-called poverty-related access to justice challenges. Refugees went out to seek for food and ended up being arrested on their way to and from the settlements. So they were found to be violating the curfew and other measures. And the limited operations of the court system and the classification of lawyers as non-essential workers further reduced the chances of refugees from accessing legal assistance, in particular if they could not express themselves in English. And in this context, the challenges of reporting sexual and gender-based violence cases by refugees need specific attention. Efforts have been made to promote informal justice mechanisms within refugee settlements, and these include refugee welfare councils and the LCs. However, the composition of these mechanisms, often composed of mainly men, limit women's capacity and confidence to report cases. Moreover, in most settlements, the overall number of police officers is inadequate to respond to the needs of an increasing population. And the lack of female police officers also makes it more difficult for female refugees to come forward and report SGBV incidents. In addition, the lack or inadequate transportation and poor access to communication means are challenges faced by the police deployed in refugee settlements, making their response difficult in a timely manner. Ladies and gentlemen, it was touched already, the relation between refugees and migrants and host community. Of course, refugees and migrants do not live in isolated bubbles. And as we've seen over the past months in Uganda, resource conflicts have been on the rise due to the pandemic. While there are no specific statistics at this point, preliminary observations in host communities in northern Uganda point to the fact that pandemics of this nature can impact significantly on prevailing relationships of coexistence between communities. So in these times of global worries, as well as government restrictions, there is a risk of increased tensions between the host communities, long-term refugees, and new arrivals, often due to competition over decreasing resources, firewood, water, land, etc. And this relates also to the real or perceived belief of unequal access to services. Interethnic tensions among refugee communities are also of concern and often reflect the configuration of group dynamics, group power dynamics back in their countries of origin. So interventions across all sectors must be sensitive to drivers of conflict and tensions, so as to ensure that they not only achieve their desired outcomes, but also contributes to social cohesion among refugees and between refugees and host communities. Interventions must de-escalate and not trigger additional tensions. And meaningful consultations with communities on program project design are essential in this context. So across all COVID-19 responses, the need for joint and coordinated assessment and in-depth thematic studies remains crucial to have a better understanding of the needs of refugees and host communities. And this will help identify gaps in the response and draw attention to issues requiring strategy adjustments and innovation. And in doing so, we must pay attention to the most marginalized and vulnerable so as to ensure that we truly leave no one behind. So as the DGF, we're very happy to support this initiative at this conference, and we look forward to the discussions over the coming days, and we do hope that we can benefit from all the expertise that is in this room and online. And I'm particularly pleased that we will be hearing from refugee representatives themselves, as it's so crucial to have that better understanding of their lived realities and lived experiences. So in closing, let me again thank Dr. Chris and the entire team for organizing this event. And we look forward to very interesting discussions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nicole, and leave no one behind. Urban exclusions, poverty-related arrests, increasing refugee host tensions. Again, I really appreciate you putting a whole range of issues onto the table for discussion. I think all of them have spaces in the discussions that we have scheduled. So very much appreciate that. And for reminding us about some of the development goals. The UN has had its own little wobble for the last 4 years, so maybe it will stabilize again now, we can hope. And hopefully those goals will become, they will reacquire their potency. It gives me a lot of pleasure now to invite our principal, the principal of the School of Law at Makerere University, Professor Chris Mbazira, to give us his remarks. I think it's the first time that we've come face to face since we were locked down, so I'm very particularly happy to see you here today, Professor. And getting the school moving again, working out how to deal with teaching during these times, all of that has added yet another layer of work on top of an already very heavy workload. So we particularly appreciate you taking the time this morning to come and speak to us. You're most welcome.
Thank you, my namesake, Chris. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. As introduced, I'm Christopher Mbazira. I'm the principal of the School of Law in Makerere. In a very special manner, I welcome all of you to this conference on forced migration. And in a very special manner, I thank our colleagues at the Refugee Law Project, led by Dr. Dolan, for consistently organizing this conference, but also for consistently working on issues of forced migration, with a very special focus on refugees. There are so many research centers, so many research projects that lose their focus, in the sense that every year so many exciting things come around. Some of the things that come around are transitional, and some research centers actually lose that focus. Not only research centers, but also community outreach projects. So in a very special manner, on behalf of the school, I thank the Refugee Law Project for the consistency that has been exhibited in working on issues of forced migration. Indeed, in the country, we know that there are not so many organizations that are working on issues of forced migration in the comprehensive manner that the Refugee Law Project does. And that has given us a very, very good niche as a school, a very, very good niche as a university, which has a global reputation. So we are proud of the Refugee Law Project. Also, in a special manner, on behalf of the school, but also on behalf of Makerere, I thank the partners that have supported the Refugee Law Project throughout. I know that the government of the Netherlands, through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, has consistently and for quite some time now supported the Refugee Law Project. And indeed, what is visible, we see this. We may not be interfacing with the embassy and the ministry, but we see that the support has progressively been going up. And we don't take that for granted, because we know so many development partners are actually pulling out in providing support to a number of agencies and partners. We also thank the DGF again for the special support that has given the Refugee Law Project. I know that recently the support that the DGF gave to the Refugee Law Project is one of the biggest support that DGF has given to an organization in Uganda. So again, we thank the DGF for that. And the DGF is supporting not only the Refugee Law Project at the school, but it's also supporting the public interest law clinic, a very special project at the school. The DGF has consistently supported this project since it started in 2012. So we're also grateful for that. And that project has changed so many schools at the school, as well as we see the Refugee Law Project changing things at the school. Briefly, to talk about forced migration in the school curriculum, we know that as the oldest faculty of law in the region, and a very special faculty of law in Uganda, we produce the biggest number of lawyers. We know that we have a responsibility to graduate lawyers that have the skills to work in various areas. As a country that hosts a very big population of refugees, we have a responsibility to have graduate lawyers that are actually skilled and have the interest in working with such vulnerable communities. So we don't take the work that the Refugee Law Project is doing for granted, because it helps us. And indeed, we've, yes, for some time now had a course in the master's program on forced migration, but we realized that actually that's not enough, because our graduate program currently attracts a very small number of lawyers. So the majority of the lawyers that practice in Uganda actually have the first degree. So we know it's our responsibility to ensure that we infuse elements of forced migration in the undergraduate program. That's the Bachelor of Laws. And initially we thought that we could do that by introducing a special course at the undergraduate level. But it has not been possible, because the undergraduate program is so packed, and there are so many demands. Every now and again, I have people walk into my office to say, School of Law, we've realized you are not teaching this. It's very important you teach this. After a week, another group walks in. So the demand is too high. But we've found creative ways of going about that, and we've worked very closely with the Refugee Law Project to infuse elements of forced migration in the teaching of law at the undergraduate level through a special internship program, which again is supported by the government of the Netherlands. We are grateful for that. We are seeing the impact of that, where every year we send out hordes of students to work with the Refugee Law Project in the various locations where it works, and to interface with refugees. And the feedback that we get when we go to supervise the students, I've personally participated in the supervision, but when we hold our debriefs, you can see that there is a very big change in terms of the attitudes, in terms of them understanding their responsibilities. We've actually, through that program, had our students break through to the global scene and get involved in activities around forced migration at the global level. So we thank the Refugee Law Project and the partners for that. We also discover that we have a responsibility to link the academy, that's the legal academy that we undertake, with a practice. And again, the Refugee Law Project has drawn that linkage for us, because it has community activities. We link with them through the students, through conferences of this nature and other activities. So we are grateful for that. To turn to the subject of discussion today, which is COVID, Dr. Dolan has rightly put it. It has challenged us, even as a School of Law. Right now, we are struggling to adjust and adapt to online teaching. It is not easy. As much as Makerere has had the tools for that for some time now, we've not had the culture of doing online teaching and learning. So it's posing a challenge, and we know it's posing a challenge in all sectors of society. So it's no wonder that it's posing challenges in the area of refugees. And Nicole has touched on some of the challenges that refugees are facing: access to justice, accessing justice, places where they can get justice, and things like that. So I believe that this is a timely discussion that we are having. COVID, we know, caught all of us unaware. But we have no option but to quickly adapt, adjust, and find solutions. And I have no doubt that Refugee Law Project, with its niche that it has built over the years and its incursion into the subject of the impact of COVID, will find solutions. The school is available to support that. We know we've worked together on research. This is an area, I think, where we may want to discuss a possibility of having some academic research go into this, which will benefit not only the academics that may be undertake the research, but also the students that will be part of this. So thank you so much. Once again, I thank the Refugee Law Project. I know it's not easy to organize something like this now because of the various restrictions on movement and other restrictions. On behalf of the school, on behalf of Makerere, I wish you fruitful deliberations for today and the rest of the days. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Prof. I think just to reiterate and to echo the importance of the practical experience, and I interacted with the first round of students who went up to Lamour, and if ever you had any doubts about the importance of engaging with students, at least for me, they evaporated during that 1-hour discussion, because I saw a group of students that were practically on fire with enthusiasm about a newly discovered sense of purpose as lawyers. And I have to say, like, the law and human rights, they seem to be in principle completely connected, and in practice they're often quite far apart. And you know, I think one of the things in the discussion about access to justice and the rule of law, who is actually doing the work? I think if we take account of who are the refugee rights lawyers at Refugee Law Project, they are by and large, almost all of them are women. So there's a very interesting gender dynamic right there. You know, and we have fantastic lawyers, and I think if you follow us on Twitter, you'll see how much our lawyers around the country have done to help refugees to access justice and to escape from indefinite periods of detention because there was no lawyer available, and so on. But we have to ask ourselves, why are men not doing this work as well? What is it about the people's understandings of gender that makes them think that, oh, this kind of legal work is not for us as men? Let the women go and do that part. So I think, you know, there are a lot of interesting things that we need to understand when we look at access to justice, and being able to engage very practically, particularly through this project, funded by the Netherlands, has been a really great opportunity to ramp that up, and it still needs to be taken a lot further. So we welcome the openness of the school to take that a lot further. So now, it gives me great pleasure to move to the official opening of this event and to invite the representative of Office of the Prime Minister, Mr. Bjarhanga Godfrey, to come and open this event and let us start. And as he's coming to the podium, let me just say, Joris, and anybody else who has to leave after these important opening remarks, that we have a poster at the back which we would really request that you sign before you leave us. Thank you. Bjarhanga Godfrey, you're most welcome. Thank you.
The organizers, can we sanitize this? Thank you. Thank you, Director, Refugee Law Project. Thank you, colleagues from School of Law, Makerere University, the Embassy of Netherlands, and our supporters, our donors, our colleagues from DGF. I've seen chairpersons, LC5 chairpersons from districts hosting refugees. Those who are present, you are most welcome. I've seen colleagues, my colleagues from the Office of the Prime Minister, from the field. I think some settlement commandants have arrived. Settlement commandants who are around, can you stand up? Yes, settlement commandant from Lamo, and then settlement commandant Ajumani. I hope others will join us shortly. Colleagues from other arms of government, ministries, departments, and agencies, colleagues from academia, and Chris, allow me to, I've seen my teacher around. On a lighter note, I think I give special thanks to Shimba, Dr. Shimba David. He was my teacher when I was doing my master's in refugees and migration studies, and I think I'm very glad to see you again. I think we are with, I see Okello. Yes, Susan. We're in the same class, and this is our teacher. Hopefully, at break time, we may need to have a chat with you. And whatever I'm going to say, in case there is any mistake, then we need to share with Dr. Shimba, because part of the knowledge I have is from him. So we can share the good things and the bad things. I think you are not offended, sir. Thank you, sir. That's on a light note. But I think it's good and in good faith to appreciate those who give us knowledge. And I think it's great again that you are into this. And I know that the refugee project, you must be benefiting from the expertise of Dr. Shimba. Our partners present, you are most welcome. I'm also happy to see that refugee project, you invited some refugees. I've seen some refugees. Refugees are around. Can you wave to us? You are most welcome, because if we are talking about inclusion, and it must start from here. I'm also happy to have a big team from Refugee Law Project. I think all the regions are represented, and you are doing great work. Ladies and gentlemen, you are most welcome. Once again, my name is Biaruhanga Godfrey. I am not the Commissioner for Refugees. I'm a field coordinator for the department, but standing in for Mr. Apollo David Kazungu, the Commissioner for Refugees. I want to thank you, Refugee Law Project, for consistently, in the words of the principal, School of Law, Makerere, for another program. Okay, it's on.
This one is also. Maybe take this one.
Thank you so much. I was, I think, thanking the Refugee Law Project for consistently organizing this conference, the fourth conference on forced migration. And when we received the invitation, we were more interested in the theme for this year, the future of refugee management in the Great Lakes region. And I think my remarks will be centered on this theme. First of all, with COVID-19, we are all aware that most of the countries, if not all, closed their borders. And Uganda, as good as we have been example of any other person in the region, we had no choice but also to close our borders and close the asylum space. And up to now, our asylum space is still closed. And I think it's important for this conference to know that actually we are not receiving an asylum seeker as of today. Because we all know COVID-19 and the numbers are shooting. And I think the government is still monitoring to see whether we can have asylum space opened. However, because of our good policies, because of our good governance, we've handled a few cases. Most of us are aware of new arrivals in Zombo who were stuck in no man's land for some good time, and His Excellency the President guided that we can follow SOPs and have that group in the country. We worked hard to have the group received in the country, and they were settled in Mvepi refugee settlement. We've had another group from South Sudan. They have been under quarantine, and I think they finished their 14 days last week, but were also under special arrangements. But generally, our asylum space is still closed because of COVID-19. Many colleagues talked about effects of COVID-19 in relation to forced migration and with a special focus on refugees. We are all aware that we are running refugee settlements, but the challenge, number one, of course, most of the protection areas were affected. I'm glad that most colleagues talked about family reunion. Of course, closing the borders, people can't access this side, others were still the other side. It becomes a very big challenge. The issue to do with reduced funding, and I think there is a session about that, most especially reduction of food ratio by 30% at the time when COVID-19 was in its early stages. Of course, it has affected our persons of concern greatly. We are still struggling with that situation, and other forms of livelihood, because under lockdown, even those who are moving from one location to another to do some small works, they could not move. Up to now, markets are still closed, and most of our refugees in the settlements, they depend on those markets. So livelihood, of course, has been affected, and I think part of our discussion, this is where we need to put emphasis, and as a country, as a department, we are focusing on this. These restricted movements, they do not affect refugees only. As it seems, the general knowledge around that refugees, when they move, they are arrested, they go for firewood, they can't come back, police is deployed in the settlement. The guidelines cut across, they are for all of us, but I think why issues of refugees come out strongly is because of their level of vulnerability. And everybody will quickly pick out that category in case they conflict with the law or with some of these COVID-19 guidelines. But I think they are cutting across. In districts where we are hosting these refugees, the chairpersons who are here will bear with me that refugees are not selected to be curtailed or to meet these curfew guidelines, and then the nationals are left to go. No, they cut across, and we all know this. We must observe. These guidelines are for us, for the good of all of us, not only for refugees. When we talk about the future, when we talk about the future of refugee management in the Great Region, in the Great Lakes region, it's a big concern to us as Office of the Prime Minister, because we have been leading in terms of many things, in terms of big numbers, in terms of policies, and in terms of the response. First of all, the issue to do with burden sharing. As most of you have rightly said, we have the biggest number, now close to 1.43, the biggest number in Africa, and the third in the whole world. And the burden is too much. So the issue of burden sharing is important in Great Lakes region. It could be sharing of these numbers or having resources that can match with the numbers we host. Instead, our resources are reducing. The numbers are increasing, but resources are reducing. So I think colleagues who have been supporting our response, this is something that you must interest yourselves in. Resources are reducing, but numbers are increasing. Even when our borders are closed, numbers are increasing. One thing that COVID-19 never affected is production of children. And we are going to get statistics, I think, in some of these sessions, the number of children from March up to date. We've just resumed registration of backlog, but I think commandants will tell you that the biggest number of people we are having are the newborn babies. So somebody will say, but you closed your borders in March. How come the numbers are increasing? And we have also noticed that the rate of birth is actually slightly higher than the rate of death, which is good under normal circumstances. But with this reduced funding, I think we need to interest ourselves, the researchers in the house, the donors in the house. This trend is not very good for the future management and protection of refugees in Great Lakes region. The government is not seated. As much as you are supporting government, we've taken a lot of steps, including acquiring soft loans from World Bank, and most of you are aware of projects like Dr. Deep projects. There are very few countries in this world that can take up a loan to facilitate projects as a result of refugees. The international community is somehow leaving this responsibility to hosting states, which is quite unfair, and I think we need to come and support states which have opened their hands. The Netherlands Embassy, we are very excited about open door policy, but this policy is breaking us because resources are needed in the sectors that are very crucial for refugees and nationals. Issues to do with the environment, issues to do with production in terms of livelihood, issues to do with education. We are all aware that we have even started these response plans, costed response plans. But these response plans, up to now, are not funded, most of them. I think we have got little resources to facilitate education response plan. The other response plans, costed, and they are in place. Health, environment and water, we are now working on jobs and livelihood. They all need resources. So I think that's a focus for the future of refugee management in Great Lakes region. I think Refugee Law Project is focused on having these resources going directly to refugees. But this has also its implications and challenges in terms of sustainability. We have tested the waters. I think some partners came with resources to give some urban refugees in Kampala, but now we are in conflict resolution as one of our biggest assignments on an everyday basis, because it's not sustainable. You give these resources to a head of a family, they will not even spend a day. And some of these resources are supposed to be for 30 days or plus. And someone will pocket this change, and the rest of the family members will just be. So we have to look at issues of sustainability, and if people get used to this money, how are we sure that the children, the other vulnerable groups in the family can benefit from these resources? It would be a good idea, but I think we need to do a lot of studies around this. We are already seeing challenges. We've seen challenges with cash for food. We are seeing challenges with little resources we put in Kampala as a result of COVID. And we are seeing challenges even where some refugees are actually given these resources as a revolving fund in terms of business. So there is a challenge in trusting these resources. What have we done? Engaging refugees. We started what we call REF, Refugee Engagement Forum, as one of the components of CRF, to make sure that refugees are with us in terms of planning and to advise us on what can work better for them. So some of these good ideas Refugee Law Project have, you can also be part of REF, the Refugee Engagement Forum. Many partners are already supporting that forum, and I think you can get more ideas from these refugee leaders. The forum brings on board all refugee leaders from all the settlements in the country. Even with COVID-19, I think UNHCR and partners, they have tried to make sure that we have these meetings, even online. Refugees also having Zoom meetings facilitated by different sub-offices in the region, in the areas where we operate. So it is, the government is not seated with these projects coming on board. We just need our partners to keep on pushing and mobilizing for more resources. Of course, we have also witnessed some stability in some of the neighboring countries, not necessarily neighboring, but countries which have been producing refugees to Uganda. A case in point is Burundi. After elections, we see some stability, and a number of refugees have already stepped forward asking for voluntary repatriation. And we've already started meetings to see how they can be facilitated. But again, the challenge of COVID-19, because borders are closed. Even Burundi borders are what? Are closed. But people are willing to go home. What do we do? And we're engaging UNHCR on a light note. Rwanda, Burundi, borders are closed. People want to go home. Are you going to fly from here up to Bujumbura? That's very expensive. We have to use one of the countries. Will the country, these countries allow us to use their territories as exit routes in this COVID-19 era? So we are engaging different actors, including embassies, to see how we can support that group. But I think to talk about durable solutions, in this conference, you are centering on resettlement. But the issue to do with voluntary repatriation is highly affected by COVID-19, most especially on the part of closure of borders. So almost all durable solutions are affected. We are all aware that naturalization in African countries is still a very big issue. So we have been relying on two durable solutions, and that is voluntary repatriation and resettlement. Resettlement, you've talked much about it, but also we have to include voluntary. It's affected seriously. Even those who don't want to have organized voluntary repatriation, they can't move because most of the countries' borders are still closed. Even in Uganda, moving out and coming in, they just opened for some categories, and refugees was not part of the categories that the borders were opened for. I talked about opening partially for special groups, and I think this is something good for the country. When all countries had closed their borders, but for us we said no, we can't have people stranded for 2 months in forests. And I think we were the only country during the first lockdown to open borders for asylum seekers. If I were you, I would clap for Uganda. And I think those who are into forced migration, you can give credit to Republic of Uganda. This is not to draw our own trumpet, but to emphasize on this issue of future management. Because if you are to look at management, as much as the interpretation of management is as if, you want to manage people, why can't you allow them to do their work? Management is a very big thing in terms of policies, in terms of leadership. It's not about response, it's not about finances, it's about a lot of things. If you left people to manage themselves, even nationals, they would not manage. There must be checks and balances for you to achieve something. So the good governance did that, and we are very happy as actors, as the department, to have really thought about this in a humanitarian way, that even during COVID-19, we are still humanitarian actors, and we must be seen as people who have been leading in this fight. The issue of localization agenda is a very strong issue, and we are looking at it in 2 ways. We are looking at it in 2 ways. One, localizing the response. And this is what we've been talking about, that why can't we have local actors in terms of local NGOs, in terms of groups from the areas that are hosting these refugees, and the issue has been capacity. Then why can't we build their capacity to respond? But when we talk about localization agenda, most of us think of jobs. We need workers from this area. We need employees from this area. It's not only about workers. It's about even the materials we use, the actors, the NGOs, the community-based organizations, the groups that have come up to support the response. Why can't we build their capacities and we localize this response for sustainability? From the other angle, localizing a refugee program is giving things to them, these resources, and they manage. And we may not be comfortable with that part of localization because of the issues I talked about in terms of sustainability. But localizing the response, we entirely agree with you. This is the way to go. And we had started on this program. We used the terminology called twinning. The international NGOs twinning with local NGOs to build their capacities for a period of time so that they can take up this responsibility. And in this era of resource, where we have resources dwindling every time and again, this is the way to go. Because we are looking, let me use one example of human resource. You have one expert from London may earn 20,000 US dollars a month. An expert doing the same work to the environment and livelihood in Kampala.